When a rowdy group of bikers surrounded Walter, an elderly man quietly standing in the parking lot, they had no idea who they were dealing with. They mocked his age, his quiet demeanor, and his worn jacket. But when Walter made a single phone call, everything changed, and they were left stunned. The afternoon sun hung low over the small-town diner, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Inside, the clatter of dishes and the hum of casual conversation filled the air. Outside, Walter Gray, a quiet man in his late 70s, stepped out, adjusting his old leather jacket. His silver hair and stoic demeanor gave him an air of quiet dignity, but to the group of bikers revving their engines nearby, he was just an easy target. Walter had parked his dusty pickup truck near the edge of the lot, far from the chaos. As he approached his vehicle, one of the bikers, a stocky man with a scruffy beard and a smirk plastered across his face, noticed him and nudged his friends. "Hey, look at this guy," he said, loud enough for Walter to hear. "What's a grandpa like him doing out here?" The other bikers laughed, their leather jackets gleaming in the sunlight. They revved their engines, circling closer to Walter as he opened the truck's door. "Hey, old man," another biker shouted. "You lost or something? Need a map to the retirement home?" Walter didn't respond. His calm, unbothered expression only seemed to aggravate them. One of the bikers stepped off his bike and swaggered toward him. "We're talking to you, Grandpa. Too good to answer us." Walter turned slowly, his sharp eyes meeting the biker's sneer. "I'm not looking for trouble," he said evenly. His voice was steady, unshaken, as if he'd seen far worse than the taunts of a few young men. The bikers laughed louder. "Not looking for trouble?" the leader mocked. "Well, maybe trouble's looking for you." Walter glanced at them, his expression unreadable. Then, without another word, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and made a call. The bikers exchanged amused glances, their laughter echoing through the lot. "What's he gonna do? Call his knitting club?" one of them joked. But as Walter spoke quietly into the phone, their laughter began to falter. They had no idea what was coming next, or who Walter really was. The bikers watched Walter closely, their mocking grins never wavering. One of them, a tall man with a shaved head and tattoos covering his arms, leaned on his bike and smirked. "What's he doing? Calling his grandkids?" Walter kept his calm as he spoke into the phone, his voice too low for them to hear. He didn't raise his tone or show an ounce of fear. It was as if the bikers' jeers were little more than background noise. "It's me," he said into the phone. "I need a favor. Bring the crew. You know where I am." He hung up and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Then, turning back to the bikers, he looked at them without flinching. "You boys have about 10 minutes to leave," he said quietly. The leader of the group, a burly man with a leather vest adorned with patches, burst out laughing. "10 minutes? Or what, Grandpa? You're gonna hit us with your cane?" The other bikers roared with laughter, revving their engines and circling closer to Walter. One of them kicked dirt toward his boots, but Walter didn't budge. He simply stood there, his hands in his jacket pockets, waiting. Minutes passed, and the bikers continued their taunts. But then, faintly in the distance, the sound of rumbling engines began to grow. At first, the bikers didn't pay attention, too busy entertaining themselves. But the sound grew louder, closer, until it became impossible to ignore. The leader frowned and turned toward the road. "What the hell is that?" The rumble of engines wasn't just a few bikes, it was a convoy. A line of motorcycles appeared on the horizon, their headlights piercing the afternoon sun. There were at least 20 of them, roaring down the road in perfect formation. Walter's calm expression didn't change. "Your time's up," he said simply. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances as the convoy rolled into the parking lot, their engines deafening. The newcomers were older, grizzled men and women, each wearing leather jackets adorned with military patches and insignias. These weren't ordinary bikers, they were veterans. One of the riders, a tall man with a gray beard and a commanding presence, dismounted his bike and walked straight toward Walter. "Good to see you, Captain," he said, extending his hand. Walter shook his hand firmly. "Thanks for coming, Commander. Didn't mean to drag you out here, but I've got a situation." The commander turned toward the group of younger bikers, his sharp eyes scanning them. "So, these are the boys causing trouble?" The leader of the bikers tried to regain his bravado, though his voice faltered slightly. "We weren't causing trouble. We were just having a little fun. No harm done, right?" The commander stepped closer, his voice low and firm. "No harm done. You've been harassing a decorated war hero, a man who's seen more battles than you could even imagine. And you think that's fun?" The younger biker's confidence evaporated as the full weight of the situation began to sink in. We didn't know," one of them stammered. "You didn't care to know," Walter said, stepping forward. For the first time, his voice carried an edge, the quiet authority of someone who had commanded respect his entire life. "You looked at me and thought I was an easy target because I'm old. But let me tell you something. This old man has faced tougher enemies than you'll ever be." The tension in the air was thick as the veterans surrounded the younger bikers, their presence intimidating but calm. The commander spoke again, his tone unwavering. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to Captain Gray, and then you're going to get on your bikes and leave. If we ever see you harassing anyone again, you'll be dealing with all of us. Do you understand?" The leader of the bikers swallowed hard, his earlier arrogance completely gone. He looked at Walter, his eyes avoiding direct contact. I'm sorry, sir. We didn't mean any disrespect." Walter nodded slightly. "Apology accepted. Now go." The younger bikers didn't need to be told twice. They quickly mounted their bikes, their bravado replaced by embarrassment and fear. The roar of their engines was quickly drowned out by the veterans as they left the parking lot, disappearing into the distance. As the convoy of veterans began to disband, Walter turned to the commander. "Thanks for coming, Jack. Didn't want this to escalate, but they needed to be taught a lesson." Jack smiled. "Anytime, Captain. You know we've always got your back." Walter chuckled softly. "I know, and I appreciate it." The veterans lingered for a few more minutes, sharing stories and catching up. For Walter, it was a reminder of the brotherhood he'd found during his years of service, one that hadn't faded with time. When the last of the veterans rode off, Walter climbed into his truck, his expression calm but reflective. He hadn't wanted trouble, but sometimes trouble found you. And when it did, he knew he wasn't alone. By the next day, word of the incident had spread around town. People whispered about the old man who had faced down a group of bikers and called in a convoy of veterans. Walter, however, went about his day as usual, unfazed by the attention. For him, it wasn't about proving a point or making a scene. It was about respect, something he'd earned through years of sacrifice and service. And if it took a phone call to remind a few reckless bikers of that, so be it. Walter Gray might have been quiet, but he wasn't ordinary. And now the whole town knew it. Walter sat quietly on his porch the next morning, a cup of coffee in hand. The events of the previous day had already started to fade from his mind. He didn't dwell on the bikers or the scene that had unfolded. For him, it was just another moment where respect needed to be taught, and sometimes reminders had to be firm. The small town, however, couldn't stop talking about it. Word spread quickly of the quiet veteran who had faced down a group of rowdy bikers with nothing but a phone call and unshakable confidence. Neighbors who had never spoken to Walter now stopped to greet him, their eyes filled with newfound admiration. But Walter didn't seek attention or gratitude. His actions weren't about ego. They were about standing up for what was right. As he looked out over the street, Walter thought about his brothers-in-arms, the men and women who had answered his call without hesitation. Decades might have passed since they wore their uniforms, but their bond had never wavered. That brotherhood, forged in the fires of service, was something no bully or loud engine could ever disrupt. The bikers, meanwhile, had learned a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Their laughter and arrogance had crumbled in the face of quiet dignity and unwavering strength. Walter didn't need to throw a punch or raise his voice. His past, his actions, and the respect he commanded spoke louder than anything else. Walter's story is a reminder of the power of respect, unity, and standing up for what's right. In a world that often overlooks quiet strength, it's important to remember the sacrifices made by veterans and the values they embody. If this story inspired you, take a moment to think about the veterans in your life or community. Share this video to remind others of the importance of respect and to honor those who have served selflessly. Hit the like button if you believe in standing up for others, and leave a comment to share your thoughts or experiences. Have you ever witnessed someone quietly but powerfully demand respect? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of the values that truly matter. Together, we can share these lessons and make respect the standard.